You may not think that you could get milk from a tree, but Fox News has been milking this tree story for about 2 days now. Let's give a little bit of an update on what happened after someone, apparently an unhoused individual with what they are saying is a history of mental illness, burned down the Fox News Christmas tree. That may seem like an unfortunate but simple explanation. Well, that's not good enough for them. So here's more of what Fox and Friends is saying about this whole incident.
The cover of the New York Post, treason. Grinch sets fire to Fox's Yule display and he is freed without bail despite a long rap sheet. And we know more about that guy right there, 49-year-old Craig Tamahana. After he was arraigned yesterday, he said, "I didn't do it." He denied the arson, then he hurled obscenities at the reporters before asking the reporters, "Hey, does anybody have a cigarette?"
Right, his family knows he's crazy. No judge could find a way to keep this guy locked up. It's unbelievable.
He wasn't eligible for the bail under these new liberal reform laws.
That's right.
But the judge could have found a way to keep him locked up if he felt as though he was a threat to society. Note to judge, he's a threat to society.
Well, here's the thing. In New York, under the new liberal policies of bail reform, arson is only a felony. You can only be held if it's a felony. If the suspect tries to harm a person or commits a hate crime. And apparently lighting a Christmas tree on fire is not a hate crime.
Okay, so it took, I don't know, less than one full day for them to move into, this isn't just unfortunate. This isn't just gonna be ammunition for our constant talks about the war on Christmas. No, it's actually a hate crime now, Sabrina, to burn down their Christmas tree.
So they are aware of what a hate crime is then.
Interesting. They've discovered it.
They've discovered it all of a sudden, because I think Tucker Carlson specifically didn't know what it is. He said he doesn't know how to define it, but it seems like Fox News knows how to define it very well, but only if it applies to an inanimate object like a Christmas tree.
Exactly, and despite the fact that this guy, they're saying he's crazy. That's the terminology Fox News is using. His family is saying he has mental health difficulties. They haven't been able to establish, and the police have apparently ruled out a political or ideological motive, let alone an anti-Christian motive. He seems like a guy that has issues and committed a property crime, and they're still doubling down on, this is a crime against all of us, despite the fact that it's not my tree. It's literally just a tree. There's a tree outside, it's a tree for a corporation. It's not even technically a tree, it's like a holiday display. It's not real, by the way, not that that would matter. But they really want it to be something bigger. Anyway, we have Colby Hall Media listed some of the things that they think right-wingers believe in. Christianity is under attack, big cities with Democratic mayors are lawless, and an opportunity for resilience in the face of adversity. This is sort of demonstrating all of that. And you'll note that they're using it to attack these like liberal bail laws. Have they ever gone off on conservative bail laws, like a person who commits some minor offense and can't afford the bail, so they stay in prison for a year waiting for their trial? Have they ever been aggrieved about those conservative bail laws? No, they wait until there's a little bit of reform and they can find one instance in which they think it's been improperly applied.
Yeah, they're just very much like waiting to feel like the victim in this situation, especially. Because like in situations where, for example, like there's an officer involved shooting, they don't have any trouble going along with like that headline. But if it's like a liberal media outlet saying, "Oh, tree caught on fire," they're like, "Oh, well, who caught that tree on fire? This is an arsonist," and they won't identify the actual person who did it. It's like, okay, so you are aware of how headlines work. Again, it's just a matter of your own narrative.
Exactly, yeah. They get that causality can be implied in a headline. And I agree, do it for both. Do it for when a cop shoots someone. It's not like bullet was discharged, cop nearby when it happened, but you're right. They don't generally mind that. And look, you pointed out the sort of weird, flexible relationship to the concept of hate crimes that Fox has had. It very much depends on the situation, whether something is obviously a hate crime, like in this case, that's not in any way obviously a hate crime, but they think it's convenient to say that it is, and other things that don't fit into political narratives that they like, they will deny that they're hate crimes, or even when it's very clear, they will manipulate what sort of hate crime it is. And so I want to take you back 6 years to the wake of the Charleston shooting. So a white male went into a black church and shot it up, killing a bunch of people, which definitely does seem like a hate crime and a fairly obvious instance of race-based violence. I mean, after all, he wanted to start a literal race war, but they weren't having it. So here's a little bit of video from Fox News from back after that incident.
We're urging people, wait for the facts, don't jump to conclusions. But I have to tell you, I'm deeply concerned that this gunman chose to go into a church, because there does seem to be a rising hostility against Christians across this country because of our biblical views. And I just think it's something that we have to be aware of and not create an atmosphere in which people take out their violent intentions against Christians. And I would mention one other thing very quickly, and that is I would urge pastors and men in these churches to prepare to defend themselves. It's sad, but I think that we've got to arm ourselves, at least have some people in the church who are prepared to defend the church when women and children are attacked.
It was released earlier, and extraordinarily, they called it a hate crime. And some look at it as, well, it's because it was a white guy, apparently, and a black church. But you made a great point just a moment ago about the hostility toward Christians. And it was a church, so maybe that's what they're talking about. They haven't explained it to us.
Well, yeah, I don't know whether most people jump to conclusions about race. I long for the day when we stop doing that in our country. But we don't know why he went into a church, but he didn't choose a bar. He didn't choose a basketball court. He chose a church, and we need to be looking at that very closely.
First of all, shooters like Dylan Roof have gone into bars and they've gone into basketball courts, and they do shootings like this literally everywhere. Maybe you can look into some of that, but Sabrina, what did you think about that? That being back from 2015?
Well, yeah, I think they know exactly what they are doing. They are aware of it. And so I'm just so confused as to why they wouldn't want to call it a hate crime, why that's even up to debate. And yet for a Christmas tree, they want to call it a hate crime when nobody was actually hurt by this. It's an object. It's a holiday thing. And plus, the Christmas tree was not always a Christian symbol the way it is today. It originated from a pagan holiday. So you can't even say that there's so much history behind it either. So I'm just confused as to what they think a hate crime is, or just how they're using it.
I think you're right, and I think we could definitely dive into what they think it is. But I think more importantly, I don't think they care at all. Everything is contingent on what it can be used for. You're right. It was just a piece of property, literally for a corporation. It's not like some sweet old woman put her last life savings into a big Christmas display and someone burned it down. Insurance is just going to cover it, and it's a corporation's thing. Corporations are not worshipers of a particular religion. It's a corporate board, but it's convenient to them to label it as one. You can see him, Ducey, in that video sort of trying to work it through. The guest, E.W. Jackson, is like, let's not jump to any conclusions. It's a white kid who went into a historically black church and shot a bunch of people. I think if you're ever allowed to jump to conclusions, it's a pretty good situation to start hopping in. But then Ducey's like, they call it a hate crime. Well, I mean, allegedly he's white, who knows? But it's also a church. Maybe that's what we mean. Who knows? Because even there, when he's in the middle of trying to divert, I think, justifiable fears about yet more racially discriminatory violence, actual hate crimes based on race. He's trying to turn it towards Christianity. He's also still trying to mock the idea that hate crimes are a thing. That sure, yes, it's also just a crime. You are killing people, but you are doing it to achieve a racially or religiously, some sort of ideologically motivated reason. That is exactly what Dylan Roof was doing. He's not alone in that, but he's a great example of it. And they did not care, because they do now about the tree, and maybe I'll get in trouble. They care more about that tree than the people who were killed in Charleston. That is indisputable. They certainly got worked up more about it.
Yeah, and then at one point he even asked himself, he's like, oh, why did they do a church? Well, actually, I'm not gonna dive into that. And then he started, to divert his message elsewhere. It's like, really, I think we all know why he went into a historically black church. Like I think he caught himself in that moment.
I think we can figure it out. Yeah. For more political news, breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.